Okay, we are recording live here, guys.
Guys, what's up? Super stoked today. Our guest. We're first of all, we are just like, it's a pleasure to have you, man. We are super freaking hyped. Our guest today is a world-class athlete, a coach, the founder of the Human Performance Project. He is all about leveling up and diving into the deep end, guys. Without further ado, Tyrell Mara. Let's go, dude. How's it going?
Love it. Hey, well, thanks for having me. And I've got to say, right off the bat, I think the handful that of these podcasts that I've had the opportunity to listen to, Nigel has done the introduction because Devin, you haven't been there, and I've got to say, Devin, that was pretty awesome. That was Nigel.
I know.
I think that's a non-negotiable. Devin's got to record all of those. That was awesome.
I get that. I get that all the time, Tyrell. It's it because Dev, there was a couple of ones about a year ago. They would say, "Hey, Dev, can you like follow me around everywhere and just introduce me everywhere I go?"
Be the little just the plug at the beginning of all the interviews.
I love it. No, I'm so excited to be here. Yeah, excited and I think it's like a bit of a blank canvas, right, in terms of where we get to go. So yeah, I'm ready to dive in.
Let's start off with, we haven't done this for a little while. We have our guests, do something called 2 truths and a lie. So one of these things, or 2, 3, they can all be lies. So I'm going to read a couple of things that Dev and I are going to have to guess which is the lie. Okay. And then we'll see what happens. Okay. Ready, Dev?
Yep. Ready.
Okay. Number 1, Tyrell says that I'm an extreme introvert. Well, I can already tell that's a little bullshit. So that's not. Number 2, I lived in Europe for 3 years. Okay. And number 3, here's a good one. I love going for long swims in 3 degrees C water.
Damn. Yeah.
So what do you think?
Well, you know what? Most people probably think, that one's probably not true. But in fact, I know that's true. So we got to write that one off the table. And
you've done your homework.
And the other one of you being an introvert, people will be like, well, that's not true because look at this guy. But I think, in fact, you are a bit of an introvert. It's kind of like myself, these extrovert introverts. Somehow it works. It's weird. So I'm going to go with you didn't live in Europe for however long it said.
Oh, hey,
Nailed it. Sorry, Nigel. I should have let you guess, but that was such a perfect deduction, Devin, as well. And I tried to make them like as, I feel like, generic maybe as possible. And this is where the introverted side of me, I get like that pressure, anxiety of like getting put on the spot to give questions like that. So
yeah, totally.
I feel like I did an okay job, but not great job. But there you go. You got it. I did not live in Europe. I lived in the US for university, but yeah, never in Europe.
Wow, and it's so good. Yeah, Devin, you're bang on. The way when you start talking about it, I'm like, oh my gosh, that totally kind of does make sense. Because that's the way I found myself as a kid too. Complete extreme introvert. I don't think I ever put my hand up. I don't think I ever answered a question in elementary school or high school ever. Yeah. And I created diversions. I'd knock the books off my desk. If the teacher asked me something, just so I wouldn't have to answer. I was just so terrified of, crazy.
Yeah, I get nervous sometimes just walking in the grocery store,
Yeah.
It's serious.
Well, I think everybody does.
I think I force myself. I have this thing where I like force myself though to like do your thing, put yourself in the deep end, be in that awkward conversation. I'm like, I force myself because I know it'll be good for me. But I'm like, but as soon as you say hello, everything changes, and you're like, oh, that wasn't as bad as I thought.
I mean, look at all 3 of us just as a microcosm of all of that. Like extreme for me, it was very extreme. Like, but the introversion side. But you combine these ingredients of like, okay, I'm really passionate about this thing, and I want to push my limit. Like, I'd rather go for it, right? Take that leap, Nigel. Than not. And you start being able to build out these sides of yourselves that are very externally not introverted facing. Based on like the pursuit, right? The journey, and like those things end up becoming skills, at least for me. Like I kind of know I have these skill sets that I can, facilitate, present, all of those things. But ultimately, like I need to go and find my sanctuary because like that introverted side still needs to be fed.
Right. Yeah.
But total testament of the journey, right? That we've all kind of found ourselves in quite outward, external facing roles, but resonate with that introvertedness.
So your sanctuary, you're saying, is swimming long distances in 3 degrees water.
One of them, yeah, exactly. That's right. Yeah. So I definitely, I mean, this like kind of ties into, I'm sure that part of the journey that we'll talk about for me, right? Of like, playing Division I basketball, and then eventually like this athletic tapestry of my life, which, I went for an Olympic bid. And ice swimming has kind of been the next chapter of that. And it's like this weird Venn diagram. I mean, I think I visualize the world a lot in Venn diagrams, like visual representations. And it's like, I love suffering. Like, so there's the pain aspect of the cold and the discomfort. Like that to me is like my addiction.
Yes.
It's a sanctuary. It's a very quiet pursuit, obviously, because you're in the water, your head is underwater. But then the third thing that has been the most interesting in this chapter of my life is that it meets the time requirements in terms of something that checks those other boxes. It's, restorative, suffering, fulfilling, and obviously physically challenging, but it only takes like 30 minutes or 20 minutes because you actually physically can't be in 3-degree water for much longer than that without things going really long.
Exactly.
Which is, something I took out of discus, right? Was that, any of these really elite athletic pursuits are inherently incredibly selfish by nature, right? So in this chapter where I've got, young daughters, 6 and 8 years old, like my family and the time I spend with them is like kind of the paramount priority. And so ice swimming fits this beautiful box that I kind of stumbled upon a few years ago.
Wow. Well, let's go back like a few years here, because you've been a speaker at various different events and whatnot, and I was really intrigued by your story of your 12-year-old story. I thought that was just, oh my gosh, like talk about being thrown in the deep end. That was the deep end. That was an extreme deep end. I mean, if you're 17, 18, it would have been a deep end, but like at 12 years old, can you tell us a little bit about your backstory there? Because it's quite fascinating.
Yeah. So I mean, in some ways I'm still unpacking that chapter and trying to give really good language to it. But, essentially, and all of this is, I kind of have to start by saying, and I know this will resonate with you, Nigel, just in terms of some of our conversations, is like, I owed the debt of gratitude to my parents, right? Because they were the one that kind of helped facilitate this very early budding human being into the trajectory that I have had the privilege to go on, which, going to that 9, 10, 12, 11, 12 years old, when I was 9 and 10, I kind of started like catching on to this idea of having a dream of being the best basketball player in the world, right? Being the very best. And it had to do, I think, something with like watching March Madness and my parents being there, and this little like flicker of a seed of an idea came to life. And then, my parents somehow found a way to like cultivate it and nurture it and like blow some, some air on it to like help it grow.
Yeah.
While us all knowing, A, I'm 9 years old, like this could change tomorrow. B, at that time, in Canada, there weren't really a lot of kids playing Division I basketball. Like today, the basketball has really moved forward in Canada, but back then it was, 1, 2, maybe 3 kids a year out of the entire country got those like full ride scholarships. But the dream had been set, right? And so, 9, 10, 11 years old, I was like kind of just starting on that journey. I decided in grade 6 to move from my elementary school, which, when you put yourself in like a grade 5 or grade 6 year old, you that's all is like your friends that you go to school with every day. That's your whole world. And so the first real deep end for me was choosing to say, I'm going to leave everything I know and go from, my elementary school to a new school, which is like the best school kind of in the area for basketball.
Right.
And my parents were really explicit about me having to make that decision on my own. And kind of saying, you can take as much time as you need, but you've got to make the call, right? So as a grade 5, grade 6, that was a big weight on my shoulders. And then basically, when I was getting to be 12 years old, I had this opportunity. So now I had transferred, I was at this new school. I was like laser set on, going and playing Division I basketball, getting the scholarship.
Yeah.
And so then the journey became, and my coach is probably that third person that I owe a pretty, big debt of gratitude and is what has gotten me here. So Scott Allen at White Rock Christian Academy at the time, basically, he found a way to get me into, like, at that time it's called the AAU circuit, which is like the club basketball circuit in the US, which all the big coaches go to, and you travel around, and kind of like the circus for elite basketball, the road show, so to speak. So 12 years old, my coach comes up to me and basically says, hey, I've got this opportunity for you to play AAU basketball in Philadelphia this summer. I found a team, I found a coach, like it's all ready to go.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to make the call. So it was like that second big decision for me that I had to make. And I didn't even know where Philadelphia was, right? Like I had no context of
I know you're 12 years old.
Anyways, the bigger question mark or amazing thing about this story is my parents were also on board with me doing this. And so that summer, you know, like this is before there were cell phones, right? So I would be calling my parents from pay phones to check in with them and all of that, but they bring me to the airport and kind of drop me off and say, hey, when you land in Philadelphia, just look around and find a huge 6'8" guy that's holding a sign that says Tyrell Mara on it, and you'll be on your way. And so I got on the plane by myself, flew across, you know, the country, the continent, landed in Philadelphia, found my coach there, and that began, I mean, I won't go into all the details, but it began basically like the most informative experience of my life, you know, maybe still today, but certainly at the time, which now I look back and like, that was my rite of passage, right? Like, I think these rites of passage in our life are like so critical. And increasingly, I think in the Western world, we have to manufacture these because we live such a comfortable, easy life. And I think our kids are continuing that. So, you know, just to give you like a little insight into how that journey went, I was there for, you know, basically 3-4 weeks. My dad came down at one point, and then I kind of kept going through the summer.
I mean, the one thing that blew me away too is just it really resonated was when I guess you got there and then you went to a dorm or somewhere. You went in, you opened up the door and you went into the room, and there were two guys there, and I think they were big, huge college guys, football players, 300-pound football players. They're like, get that F out of our room or whatever. And then the guy just was like, oh my God, he's a 12-year-old walking in looking for his room. And what the heck? Like,
it was the most, I mean,
I would have got on the plane and went home right then and there.
Oh, I mean, and I tried like, and so what happened was like, I got picked up at the airport, and my coach basically said like, okay, like kind of change your plans of this isn't going to be that cozy. I'm going to basically take you from the airport to Trenton, New Jersey, which is not the nicest place in, you know, in the US, and certainly from like a city perspective. So go to the University of Trenton, get dropped off at the front door. So within like leaving Vancouver to landing in Philadelphia to getting to New Jersey, so like a span of like 10 hours, I was like completely alone. He was like, and by the way, I lost all my luggage. So he's like, here's some extra shoes and like a jersey you can wear for the week. You're staying here for the week, and I'm going back to Philadelphia. So I'll see you in like 3 or 4 days when I come back.
Oh, okay.
So I'm like literally standing at the front of the university on my own, no connection, no cell phone, no nothing. My coach, who I've just met, didn't know beforehand, has now left. And so then I proceeded to like walk in, and like I'm on the brink of full panic attack, breakdown, holding back my tears. I try to get the key from the guy at the very beginning, and all these coaches were like drill sergeants, so they're like really tough. Run up to the 9th or 10th floor, open up the door, and then I knew when I was opening the door, I was like, something doesn't feel right, because there's like this pounding, loud music coming from behind the door, but it's like too late, slow motion. And these guys like ran me out of the room, because I was obviously not supposed to be there. Ran back downstairs, got the key, got up to my actual dorm room, closed the door, fell on the ground, and like cried the whole night. And every day I would get up at like 7 o'clock before the camp started, go to the payphone and call my parents and just be like, please let me come home. In tears, right? Sobbing. And the magic, so like in my mental model, that's like the wall. Like I hit in the wall, I was broken. I would not have sustained my effort in the deep end. But my parents somehow found this like magical skill where they could convince me that like I could just do it for one more day.
Right.
And then, one day turns into 2 days, and a week and a month. And then I was on the plane home, and the moment of my life is like, you thought you were going to die, but you survived.
Right.
And like, if you can survive this, like, Tyrell, what can't you do? So it was like that first taste of what I think is like deep self-confidence or resilience, which I've now been able to take through the rest of my life. So like that was the start of my kind of journey into who I am today, I would say.
I mean, that was the deep end, obviously. That was the deep end. I mean, talk about deep ends. Yeah,
exactly.
Wow.
Which I didn't know it at the time, right?
No,
and I think that's not what I'm so passionate about now is like all of my years in athletics and now in business. Nobody's given me the language or the tools or like the model to help me orient myself in this chaos and craziness.
Yeah.
Right. So like I've kind of navigated on my own and with the support of my parents and my coaches and like really important people in my life. But what I love is this idea that like it's all archetypal, right? We all feel the same things when we climb up the high dive and we're about to like pursue something we really are excited about and passionate about. It's fear. It's like paralyzing, crippling fear. But if you know that that fear is like actually the most important thing, because it's a signal to tell you that you're about to do something really exciting, right?
Yeah.
So that tool, like the deep end mindset, is about giving language to the experience that I went through, but in a way that people can like equip themselves to know where they are on the roadmap.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Dev, you have that, I guess, experience every time, or every time you used to walk in for an audition, right? I mean, I remember I took you for an audition to get an agent or something. I think you almost threw up in the car on the way there.
Oh.
Yeah, oh no, yeah. It's definitely a nerve-wracking thing, and I've gotten more used to it now. That, honestly, I'm looking at going to a different acting class soon, because it's like I've become comfortable in going up and
Yeah.
presenting, and I'm like, oh
Wow.
yeah. But I know as soon as you step into a new class with like 30 people, you're just like, ooh. But I'll share a quick story. I remember my first experience and ever acting, and I wanted to act when we were in the UK. We were in London, and I was like, I want to go to an acting class. And basically, so I go to this acting class, and not really what I'm expecting it to be. I think it's gonna be like, we're gonna have fun, we're gonna do all these things, and they're like, okay, prepare this scene. So I prepare this scene, and I've never prepared. I don't know what a scene is. I've never prepared a scene
That's
before.
right.
I'm 18, so I like try to learn all this material. There's like a monologue. It's like 3 pages. I'm like, okay, getting really
Oh.
stoked. And then when we get there, there's like this class, and all these chairs are spread out. And then at the front of the class, there's a chair and like a TV right behind the chair, facing the whole class, right? And then a camera pointing at the chair. So when you sit in the chair, your face is like for everyone to see in the screen.
Oh.
Right? And we're like, okay, that's intimidating in itself. So I'm sitting there going, oh, I hope I don't get the time to do this. I hope I don't. I hope because they said, oh, there's going to be a lot of people today, and we can't get through everyone, so we're only going to pick a few people. So we only went through like 5 people, let's say. There's 40 people in this class. I've never met any of these people before. And they're all English and like amazing actors. They're all going up and doing their scenes and just like blowing them out of the, it's just like so good. I'm like, wow, this is like a whole nother level. And they're like, okay, that's done. And there was that part of me, I was like so excited and so scared. And then when they said that it's not going to happen, it went away. And I was like, oh, good. Like, I'm comfortable now. I don't have to get up there and do this. Like, oh my God, thank God. Whew. Missed the bullet, right? And then, oh, hold on a second. Actually, we have time for one more. And I was like, there is no
What are the
way.
chances?
What are the chances?
Yeah, really.
And she's reading. She's like, oh, I'm just gonna choose somebody random. Devin Bennett. That was Devin Bennett. It wasn't Devin Kenzo. So now Devin Kenzo's stage name or whatever. But they're like Devin Bennett, and I was like, there's no fucking way.
Heart
I was like,
stops.
are you just
Yeah.
yeah, totally like crippling. And I get up there, and I remember I like do this scene. And I'm feeling like pretty proud of myself for just remembering these things. But I'm like, my heart is going like 1,000 miles an hour. I'm like sweating. And I got to the end of the scene. And I'm like, wow, I was kind of like proud of myself and this accomplishment of like, I did it. And then the teacher's just like, so did anybody find that believable? And everyone goes, no. Like, what did Devin do wrong? Everybody puts their hand up. And I just go, oh my God. And that was the introduction. And after that, everything felt kind of easy. And now I'm trying to get to that place again of like where it was hard and where it was intimidating and scary.
And the beautiful, I mean, that's such a, man, I was like feeling the nerves for you, like embodying you. But the amazing part, the magic, one of the pieces is like you came back, right? You came back. That's amazing. Like, and so that's what I'm always so excited. Like, and you went the first time, right? Even going the first time would have been like a leap, which is so cool because like you're tapping into something pretty deep there from like an energy and passion perspective. You're still doing it today, which is amazing.
Sure. Yeah.
That's life, right? Those are the stories.
This is really
Totally.
interesting because I go to this class in Boston, and it's an entrepreneurs, and I think your dad's been part of this. Well, he has been.
Yeah.
Your dad actually got me into the EO. He actually interviewed me to join EO, and the Entrepreneurs Organization, back in like 1993 or something. He actually. So there's this conclave in Boston. It's a bunch of entrepreneurs get together, and we have these great speakers. And I just remember the speaker came in. It was talking about the human brain, and then us humans, when we kind of push ourselves, we jump into the deep end, we take the leap, whatever these things are that we do, and we're so nervous about it. We just think we're gonna die. But every time we do something like that, your brain actually rewires itself and it learns from it. And the more we do that, the more we put ourselves into that discomfort zone, the stronger and the better we've heard all the stronger you get, but it's actually true. Your brain actually does. There's something that goes on and it rewires itself. It says, oh, I can do that again. And then when you do the next one, which is even twice as difficult, you're like, oh my God. But then you're like, oh, I can do, and you keep evolving, and it's actually like you call it a metaphysical. It actually is something. So this is exactly
everything.
what you guys are talking about. Exactly what I mean, all of us have gone through these things before, and both of you guys are, you're trying to find what's the next one, and then the cold water swimming, we can talk about what this does also to your body, and as well, going from the hot to cold. And
yeah, I think one comment I love, it's so funny because I have, like, just as my own notes, like the model that I use for my life, right? The deep end mindset, and kind of like, it's a journey, right? It's a roadmap. And when I introduce it, I always do it. Like one of my biggest challenges is, like, I go a mile deep, and I probably lose a lot of people along the way because I'm so passionate, right? I want to know. And so, for example, there's like the high dive, and you have to climb up it in order to like earn access, the privilege of being in the deep end and suffering.
Right.
Every time you jump, if you were to like double click on like your mid-air flight, is exactly what you described. And for me, I like, the term I use is crossing the neuroplasticity gap, because every time you jump, you're doing that. You're stressing your brain to rewire itself slightly. And that gives us all these great things in the moment of, like, the story that you just shared, Devin, which is, I think, like, that's where life happens. That's where magic happens. But also, it's a contributor to longevity, because it's another way of us putting stress, like healthy stress, on our body, which then shows that, like, as you age, everything down to, like, your brain, your cellular level is more resilient, and is going to be able to, like, kind of stay longer, right? Your health span is going to lengthen. So they have studies of people who did some of these harder, more challenging exercises for a longer period of their life, and they actually stay healthier longer. They live longer, but they also stay healthier longer. Their bodies are essentially more resilient to, like, the breakdown that is happening to us as we age. So I think there's all these, like, but like, all you got to do, you just got to get on the high dive, and you just got to jump. It really doesn't matter whether you succeed or fail. And if you can find your way back, eventually, like you're saying, Devin, like, eventually you make your way back to the comfort zone, because we all revert back to comfort. That's like our natural default state. And if you can just look up and find another high dive, like, you'll pretty much have, a fulfilling, meaningful life if you can just keep going through that loop, at least at the starting point, right? So I love that, right? Keeping it simple too.
Yeah, and that's your deep end mindset, right, that you've been talking about. That's incredible.
Yeah,
yeah. Now what you're doing is it's amazing. I was so fortunate. I got invited by yourself and your father to come to a workshop a couple of weeks ago out in your beautiful farm in Langley, BC, in British Columbia here. And it was fantastic. It was a workshop. I think there was 8 of us. There was probably 8 of us in it. And you did an incredible talk on the benefits, health benefits of, cold plunging, hot sauna, breath work, and meditation. And we'll talk a little bit about that right now, if that's okay. What have you got going out there, and why did you start? Like, what made you? So, I mean, I don't know if we want to leave the athletic. I mean, you really pushed yourself to an extremely high level, and now you've had a shift. What made you? What was your mindset there? What made you shift into, as opposed to leaving, being, I'm sure you still are. I mean, you still are an athlete, but having that shift into helping other people kind of achieve their goals.
I'll share like a few thoughts, because I think for me, it's funny. I was getting ready for this conversation, getting really excited for it, but also kind of realizing that for me, and I think the journey of life that I'm navigating, I feel like I'm, probably a third, if not maybe less, through the race of what I'm hoping to, like, unpack in my own mind and turn that into, content, curriculum, programs, frameworks that are helpful for others. And I think that just, like, for me, it's like I'm playing, and whether I get the privilege of that or not, right? Like, I may not be here tomorrow, and that's okay, because, like, I'm fulfilled in the moment, and that's kind of the present moment is the most important. But I think what that means is, like, I've had to, I think, give myself the permission for life to look pretty messy and disorganized at the very, like, most granular level, because I know there's these bigger pieces that are kind of moving and forming. And if you zoom out over a 5, 10, 15, 20, 30-year horizon, my goal and my hope is that there will be almost like a mosaic that connects, right? When we started the workshop, for me, the term "it's all connected" is one of the most important things, right? That's like our mindset, our brains, our physiology. But also, I think, like, one of the things that I don't really know where to place right now is I've spent the last 20 years, or at least 15 years, spending a lot of time in strategic planning and strategy And you know, and that's like, it's a really intangible thing. And whether it's about how we like design our lives and set our lives up and what we choose to invest our time and energy in, like there is a strategic planning and consideration component to it. And so there's all these different pieces of the puzzle for me that I'm trying to fit in personally. And then to tie that back to the farm, right? Because so, you know, Natasha, my wife, and I, Natasha started farming rhubarb. Like, I'll give you a little bit of a backtrack to like how we even got here in the first place. So Natasha's parents and we're kind of the third and fourth generations on this farm. So we've been here for 65 years. Natasha's family, traditionally like an egg laying, you know, like free range egg type of farming operation. We moved here because Natasha started farming rhubarb, like about an acre of rhubarb, 3,500 plants. This is about 5 years ago. She started, and then we moved about 2.5 years ago. And we, you know, we really moved a bit reluctantly, right? We didn't know, it was a bit of a jump into the deep end, but we kind of were very cautious for a lot of reasons. And then once we got here, we realized like, we may not ever leave. We love this so much. Our kids love this so much. Like, it is the most beautiful sanctuary and playground. So now the conversation has been, okay, well, if we want to stay here, how do we bring our lives, right? How do we do our life's work here? Because it's probably not going to be egg chicken farming.
Right.
And so, you know, over the last couple of years, we've had this culmination of, okay, we're farming the land, and that connection to land, like from a physiological, mental health, emotional health perspective, is really healthy, and we really enjoy it. And for me, being like kind of a corporate executive in my other life, it's a great disconnect to be able to do both, working remotely. Then Natasha started a wellness product company. So she makes, you know, kind of like artisan soaps and bath bombs and candles and all of this, called the Rabbit Hole Wellness Company. And then we invested for our own health, having this sauna and cold plunge set up at our house, basically in our backyard. And I had been doing cold exposure for, you know, 20 years because of athletics. And what I think we realized is that as we started hosting and gathering people, just our friends informally, having that space changed everything. The conversations changed, people's experience of how they enjoyed just coming to our space, all of that, we could kind of sense it. And so then this vision started to formulate of like, okay, well, if we can continue to farm crops that we can then harvest and integrate directly into our products, and those products can be a part of a lived experience where people can, you know, level up their performance, their recovery, learn about mental health, emotional health, invest in their longevity in this like nature sanctuary that, you know, if you look at Langley and the Greater Vancouver area, like the density and the amount of, you know, like condos and high rises that young families are living in and young couples are living in, like for us, that has kind of got us to the start of, you know, Nigel, we talked about like the 10-year pilgrimage at the workshop. Like for us, this is the beginning of a new pilgrimage where we want to kind of bring all those things together and then ultimately create a space that people can come and experience this, like our contribution to the community of developing mental health resilience, teaching those things, but also just providing the environment to do them really safely and effectively. I'll pause there. That's kind of like the high level, like just of how we got here.
Yeah, I mean, and it's incredible. And so now you've got groups coming. So you've been in the corporate world for quite a quite a long time, strategic planning. And now it's like, okay, well, let's do something different. I think this is what you're thinking. Let's take something different. We're going to see if we can get groups. I mean, business groups and whatever they are, and bring them to this farm. And
the wellness den.
The wellness den, right? And then it's a totally different conversation when you get there. The people are having different conversations. And now now what you're doing is you're kind of pushing people that have been, you know, fairly cozy, you know, in their, you know, corporate world into a bit of a deep end, because now you're going to go into a 3 degrees C, you know, tub, and you know, first, you know, you're gonna meditate and breathe, and you're gonna work your way into that, and you know, everybody's eyes just bulge out of their heads. It's, I don't know, I've heard about this. It's kind of crazy. There's a bunch of wackos on the internet that are doing this. Right. Now I'm doing this. Are you crazy? Like, but then the progression I saw the other day was really interesting. Watching you speak and watching you talk about the science of it, and you know what actually really does go on inside your body and in your mind, and then working the way through, and people, okay, I can do it, and then they go and it's a little celebration when they come out.
Yes.
But it's like they're just like, oh man, like I feel so good, you know, and everything is woof. It's an incredible progression to watch, and it really, so I don't know if you want to kind of talk about a little bit about, what goes on and what you're doing there, because it's I love it. It's fascinating. Devin and I are, enthralled with this, and we've both been doing it for over 3 years now. I tell so many people about it, and so many people are going down into the canyon here in the winter and jumping in and well, not jump, just kind of plunging in, sitting in.
Yeah.
And it's changed a lot of people's lives around us. And so what you're doing, I think, is like super uber important. And so if you just want to share on what's going on.
I think you summarized it so well. And I think for me, the lens from my perspective, right, and where, I mean, we really are looking at this, Natasha and I, as I think our next 20 plus years, right, and again, that idea of pilgrimage, meaning we don't really know what's going to happen in the next couple of few months, but like directionally. And I even look back and, we talked a little bit about my athletic journeys and discus and track and field and all of that stuff. And failing at some of those all of that has helped inform getting us here to where we are today. And what I mean by that is us having a venue and a space and a really non-negotiable desire, like an addiction to gather people meaningfully and well and safely and comfortably, like both from a physical and a mental, emotional perspective. That has now created a space where, like, every week today, like we just look at next week, for example. Yeah, next week is a good example because we have the public is welcome to come like Thursdays and Sundays through the summer. It's like you can come, you can drop in, and it's just the hot and cold experience and like the nature sanctuary. And that gives me a bit of an opportunity to share, some best practices around the physiology, the nervous system, how to go about your cold experience and journey. But it's really not about that. It's about coming in and having a spa-like experience. And that's awesome. Like getting people in just through that, the curiosity and intrigue. On the other end of the spectrum, we have a workshop where, for me, I think my real selfish desire in those workshops is, yes, like absolutely for the top, like I love working with top performers. I think that's one thing I've learned about myself. Like where I'm most intrinsically driven is where I'm working with people who want to push those limits, but want to level up their tool set and their roadmap and their navigational capabilities of like their own lives. And what the workshops do is they let me, like, I don't think these two ideas of having a way to navigate the world, i.e. the deep end mindset, and having really good tools for your recovery and your performance, your day-to-day energy management, which is the hot, the cold, meditation, breath, I don't think those are mutually exclusive. And so we create these two gateways into those conversations by bringing groups in and facilitating these conversations around, like, okay, we've got the hot and cold, we're going to talk about the benefits of that. But there's this other question of like, why would you do it? Why even get into the cold shower?
Exactly.
Or the cold
Why? Yeah.
What's driving you? And how long do you think you can sustain that journey that you're on? And then we get to start peeling back the layers and talking about your foundation and, your goals and your values and your intrinsic drivers and like the lifelong skills that you may not even know you are intentionally or unintentionally transitioning from one chapter of your life to the next. And by the way, that, after 50, 60, 70 years of life, that's where mastery, that's where impact, and that's where fulfillment come from. Right. So for me, like this really is a vehicle and a space to be able to start facilitating those conversations, both organically, people dropping in, but also intentionally, through these workshops. And that's my work, right? My life's work is like creating those spaces from the workshop side and the content on that side. So it's a bit of both. Yeah.
Dev, you got any little things coming up there?
Awesome. I'm stoked because we're going, actually.
You're there. You're going to be here in almost a week.
Yeah, we're going. I know. What I really found is that, thanks to Dev here, I go back 3 years ago. I'm 61 now, right? And that's only, so I go back 3 years. I've always been fairly fit. I've always been a sports guy, a big mountain biker, big skier, big backcountry skier, rock climber, all this stuff. But I would always do the sport, and I wouldn't do the prep, the training, and do a little bit of weights here and there, but I would never really get into a routine, right, to prepare to go mountain biking or skiing. But what Dev got me doing and really thinking about is a morning routine, which I have now, and I've got it, and I'm addicted to it. Like you said, you get this addiction, and it's like, getting up, and it's like the stretching and the breath work and the meditation, and then some exercise, depending on what day it is. I may do some weights, I may do whatever. And then if mine finishes off with a cold plunge, and I don't get my coffee, not allowed to have my coffee until I've done all of that. And it's a treat. Like, I know I'm sitting in there freezing, and I see the coffee up here spinning in my mind, this nice hot coffee, and that's it. And then I get out, and Reiko does it too. My wife does it. She goes kickboxing almost every day of the week. It's getting to be a bit crazy. Got to calm her down a little bit because she wants to practice on me too much. And we're way past that, right, Dev? And then but I've really found that if I had only like found out about a morning routine 35 years ago, 40 years ago, oh my gosh, how different, I would have been. It would really help shape me at a much younger age. I find it so important to get into this, this morning first thing. If you people are like, I can't do it, I'm too busy. Well, get up a little bit early, get up an hour earlier. There are actually no excuses.
No.
And I was always making excuses. And now it's like, if I don't do it, if I go away somewhere and I'm, and I don't do it, I feel off. And I see that that's what you guys are doing, is you're kind of bringing people in and showing them what the possibilities are. And they're all walking away feeling like $1,000,000. Like they're feeling incredible. I came out of your workshop. I do this every day, but I don't go like we did like 3 different plunges and 3 different saunas and the breath work and everything. And then I know my oldest son, Dylan, had just come back from New Zealand for 2 years, and he was having a gathering at our house, like 20 of his friends. He had a big party. Well, I walked in here and I was just like, hey, dudes, how's it going? Like, I was floating, and I'm like, I was on a different planet, and they're like, hey, Nige, how's it going? I'm like, oh, yeah, I'm good. Give me like an hour to get my brain back on.
Come back to Earth.
Don't even hand me a beer yet, because I can't even. There's no way I could drink. And it's just like, because I'm just floating, and it was the most incredible euphoric. Yeah, it was a euphoric. It was really, really incredible. So yeah,
Devin, I'm curious on your side, like how has your ritual evolved as you found like Wim Hof and you're kind of navigating life? What does that look like for you?
Yeah, I think it really helped me, because I feel like all of us, we have like an overactive mind. And I always tell this to people who have like, because I'm like dyslexic and ADD, but I'm always just thinking of something. My brain doesn't really go to sleep. I have trouble sleeping sometimes just because I'm just thinking of like a million things. Almost to the point sometimes where you're like, I have a million things I'm thinking of, and a million things to do, that you almost do that. Sometimes I end up doing like nothing. And I'm like, well, what am I doing? Like, well, okay, so I had no way of just like turning that off and like finding a way. Everyone's like, why don't you meditate? I was like, because I sit down, and what do I think? I'm trying to think of like black, but then I'm like, oh, this song comes into my head. Oh, that's pretty cool. Or doing this thing, or that'd be a really cool outfit to make. Or should we do that for this show, or should we not do that for this show? Like, should we, what type of gas can we use next? Anyways, it's just like so many things in my head. And I think when I first found Wim Hof, one of my buddies introduced me, Kyle Makichi. Shout out Kyle Makichi, killing it. And he was like, there's this dude Wim Hof you should check out. And he's just all, I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, you just get in the cold water, and you know what we'll do? So we met this guy, and he was one of the guys who lived in the neighborhood, hockey player, NHL guy now, legend. And he was like, they ran into him, they're like, how do you just like keep going? He's like, because I go in the canyon when I'm home. I go in the canyon 10 minutes every day. And we're like 10 minutes in the canyon. So Kyle's like, let's go in the canyon.
Oh, he was doing that, was he?
Yeah.
Oh,
So I'm feeling
that.
like hyped up by Kyle, because he's just that kind of motivating guy. And he's just like, let's go in the canyon, 10 minutes, Dad. Like, we can do that. And we're like yelling at each other, like, ah. And then I realized, like, when I came down to like a calmer state, instead of us being like, oh, because like I need that too. I get in, and sometimes I get a little like samurai, like get pumped, like go, or turn into like the Samoan rugby player. And then sometimes, but then I find like the calm with the storm, like really relaxing into it. And then I realize, like, oh my God, what am I thinking of right now? Nothing. I'm thinking about being so damn cold, I guess, that I don't, it's just like, it's a pain, but a relief. But it's kind of like getting tattoos for me. It's like therapy. I'm just trying to manage through getting through another, just like another whip, just another. And it's like that journey that gets you to this place of, oh my God, I think I might be meditating now. So that's what it did for me. It just everything went shh. And it's like, just you have to be so present right now.
That's
regardless, and that's the best way. I think it's so good for him, because it forces people. I don't want to go and get in the cold water. Oh, you guys are crazy for doing that. I'm like, well, do you suffer? Do you like have an overactive mind? Do you have problems sleeping? Do you, oh yeah, oh, I'm stressed about this and this and this. And they're, oh, don't have an overactive mind. And they'll proceed to tell you how they're stressed about 10 things that happened in
You
their
got
day
it.
and 10 more things that are going to happen. I'm like, okay, well, it sounds like you are. And most of us are, because it's just society that we live
100%.
in right now. And Vancouver's a crazy place. And it's, you know, it's such a beautiful and it's an awesome place, but there's a lot of stress. There's a lot of stress going around. So I say, like, get in the water. And then when you finally get that person to push themselves to do it, they're like, oh my God, I get what you're talking about. I'm in this place of such calm and bliss that I've never been, because I'm just so focused on being here with the breath, or being here with the feeling of uncomfortability, and working through it. And then when you get to the point where your body goes, actually relaxes, and you kind of feel that numbing warm feeling, then I feel like that's right. That's your whole thing, right? That's the wall is the getting it, or getting up on the high dive is like, okay, I'm going to decide I need to intentionally get into the bath. Getting into the bath, that's like the full send off the cliff. And hitting the water is when you find that place of like, oh, like I'm not going to die. And I did it. I did the jump, and I intentionally got in, and I did the scary thing, and now here we go. And yeah.
And unequivocally, when you ask somebody the first time that they get out of the cold water, how do you feel? It is like, I can't believe I did that. I'm so proud. And Nigel, we saw it like at that session.
I know.
And it's like, that's the work. You've just leveled up everything. Like, there's all these physiological things you've leveled up that you don't even know, but you have more confidence in yourself right now, having spent those last 2 minutes doing that thing. And you get to take that with you for the rest of your life. Like, that's amazing. That's amazing.
Absolutely. And then you chase it a little. Colder, longer.
Yeah, totally. And then I think it's like, it's then I think the thing that I get excited about is using, like, the cold is only one of many, like, what I would consider them, like, performance and recovery modalities, because really the goal is now, okay, I've got this tool that I can access anytime, as long as I have a cold shower, cold tub, a lake, a body of water nearby, as long as I can be safe and all those important things. I now can take that, and because there's this bigger thing that's happening, which is called life. And I get to choose now for the, all the minutes of the day that I'm not in the cold, how am I choosing to spend my time, energy, attention, focus, what goals am I pursuing? And the cold then becomes another tool in my toolkit to be able to sustain the journey, to keep my head above water in the deep end a little bit longer, because, like, the big picture of this, and, like, I think where I get really excited about the magic in life happening is the longer that we can stay in the deep end, you get to, that's where flow happens. That's where we get to embrace and really struggle through challenge and adversity. And by the way, like, when you get out of the deep end, whether it's after failing to pursue the Olympics or Division I, or a corporate goal that you've all of our chapters in life, you have this moment to, like, pause and be still. And I actually think, like, so for me, it's like there's a visual of this iceberg, and it's called the pause. And I would say almost all of us skip it, because our society, Devin, to your point, tells us, like, no, you got to be pushing and crushing and, like, your next goal and your next post. But it's like, no, like, you just did something amazing by keeping your head above water in the deep end for days, minutes, weeks, months, years, decades. But you haven't, the growth doesn't happen there because you're in survival mode, which is good. The growth happens just like when we strength train, when you're pausing, when you're recovering, when you're sleeping, right? So all that conscious cognitive, experience that we went through, that pause, that moment to reset, recover, and sometimes it could be weeks and even months if you're going on long, decade-long journeys. That's where we get the growth. That's where we get to, like, unpack and peel back the layers of that experience and pull out the values and, like, the new foundation that you're putting on your like, foundation of your life. It comes when we just take a moment to, like, let it all sink in and really do intentional reflection around the journey, which, like, for me, I'm still reflecting on that, rite of passage when I was 12, and I'm still reflecting and pulling learnings out of my, expedition for discus in the Olympics. But that's just as important as, like, pushing, right? Is, like, the permission to stop and pause.
Wow. I love it. I think that if we're going to get any nuggets out of today, which there's a whole ton of them, I think for me, that's probably the biggest thing that you said right there is the pause. after pushing yourself so hard. And it's so true that we as humans, we do that. Like, it's like we push, and then we have a, whatever it is, a failure or whatever, we can't quite, and then we kind of, oh my gosh, what's the next thing, and then you run off, and you often, and you just go. It's like that pause and reflection, and like you said, unwrap it all. And
And
yeah,
like, I think that word permission is like,
yes.
so I've latched onto that because I can see it. I can see, like, intuitively we don't feel like we have that. And I think where I learned, again, these are the things that I've learned along my journey that nobody told me, nobody prepared me for, but now they are archetypal, right? Our nervous systems, the way our bodies are wired are, and I just use that word archetypal, meaning it's the same. It doesn't matter, race, origin, ethnicity, color, where you live, things are happening the same way inside of us. And for me, the way that I lived the experience was I would have these huge runs towards, like, basketball provincial championships, or big, like, preparations for board meetings and, like, executive meetings in the work world that you plan for and prepare for weeks or months. And I remember when you would go and you'd have your day of the event or the day of the presentation, for me, afterwards I'd be in, like, full flow, right? Like, I love it. Like, I'm like, buzzing, on fire. That's like my flow state. But then after, I would have this huge dip, this crash, right? Like, and I would actually, especially after some of my big athletic events, I don't want to get out of bed for like 3 days, like full, like, depression. And my initial reaction when I was younger was like, what is wrong with me? Why is my body doing this? Why can't I flip the switch like I always do and get me, like, back into the gym training for 8 hours a day? But that's how our bodies work, right? Is our nervous system, our central nervous system, like, needs time to come back up to, like, homeostasis but the default mindset, I think, for a lot of us, certainly in my generation and the generation coming up after us, is like, no, you push through that, you grind, and you get back on, and you're actually undermining your greatest opportunity to learn and grow by sitting, like, letting yourself fully recover, and then just sit. And, like, you don't need to, like, life is happening right now. You don't need to rush off to something. And actually, if you spend some time asking yourself some really intentional questions, the benefit will be when you do pick your eyes back up and look for the next high dive on your horizon, it will be on a stronger compass heading than you had previously, because you know more about yourself and you can make a more sure bet, right, as you go and climb up for whatever the next deep end is, in your life. So yeah, it's all connected.
It is. I mean, and going into the business world too, we lived like that for years and years and years, where it'd be like you just pushing, and you're working, you're trying to get a project, like you're trying to get your proposals together and make sure all your costing and everything is whatever. And then you kind of put it in, and then you wait, and then you get it, and then you get the contract, and you're like, yeah, and then off you go, and you start building and doing all this stuff. And everybody is like, sleeping under their desks, and, you're just like, this is, and then everything's finishes. And then it's just like, as opposed to just, taking a break, or even sitting down and having a review of what happened. A debrief. It's like full on, well, what's next? Let's go. Bam, 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 bam. But like 25 years like that, like we were just like hammering. And then I'd sit in the shower every morning. I never forget. I get in the shower every morning, and I'd sit there and I go, okay. What's the day today? Okay. Okay, we're gonna have to let this guy go. Oh, there's not enough. Are we gonna be able to make payroll? Oh, we're gonna have to. And then boom, off you jump out of the shower. You wouldn't even dry yourself off. You'd go, and you're, and it would be constantly, year after year. And like what you're saying, I mean, our body is telling us something, and so I mean, that's absolutely key. It's another thing. If I knew this stuff 30 years ago, wow, things would have been a little bit different, I think. Yeah.
Better yet, you know it now.
I know it now.
I was going to say, you both have created this platform, which is the biggest gift, right? And Nigel, you couldn't have done this had you not gone through the journey and all the chapters, right? The ups and the downs, and like the challenges that brought you here, right?
Yeah, all of us would not be sitting here right now having this conversation unless we'd gone through everything that we've been through.
Yeah.
Right? Which is true.
Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah. Wow. Okay, so I really want to get people out to your farm there, in the Lower Mainland here in Vancouver, British Columbia, around the U.S., Canada, Europe, wherever you are. It's a really incredible program that you guys have going there, and it'll change your life. I swear to God, it'll change my life. It's changed Devin's life. it's changed our life for the better in so many ways. And it really kind of, again, it helps rewire your brain. It helps you get your mindset, gets a different mindset, and life is a whole lot better. So
Yeah, well
yeah.
said.
Yeah. So yeah,
That's
any
awesome, man.
further things anybody wants to just throw in there? Dev, you got any little?
Well, I'll just say, yeah, thank you so much for coming on. And we'll put everything in the link to the description of the video if you want to check out more things. Tyrell, which you do. So check it out. And yeah, any last question, any last final thoughts from you, brother, before we go here?
Yeah, I think I mean, obviously the wellness den and what we're doing out here is, you know, frankly, open anytime. And really what I mean by that is like, you know, my wife and I, and certainly the journey that I'm on with the Human Performance Project and the Deep End Mindset, and obviously gathering people here is like, it's just that, it's a journey. And so every conversation we get the privilege and opportunity to have with folks who are curious, are intrigued, are maybe scared, or want to like go a lot deeper and actually like, because the whole other side of the work that I do is like do long-term coaching engagements one-on-one with individuals, where we do like a mild dive deep into the deep end, in that framework. And so I think for me, it's like, it's pretty easy to find us online, and we are just a call, a text, a message away. And that's where the conversation starts. And that's, you know, basically why I'm alive living, is to have those conversations. So really appreciate, yeah, just having the opportunity to have a bit of that discussion today with both of you.
It's really, it's super cool having you on, and we're just blessed to have you here, and also it's somebody that's done it. Like you've experienced a lot of this stuff, you know, and now to be, you know, showing people,
Yeah,
you know, how they can improve themselves and whatnot. I think it's just fantastic, and your location's great. So yeah, like Devin said, we're going to put all of the contact information in the in our little blurb below. And yeah, we want everybody to, you know, connect with you, and hey, come on out.
yeah,
Come on out and do it. Yeah.
love
Yeah.
it. Thanks,
Yeah.
you guys.
Cool.
So
Thank
grateful.
you.
Yeah. No, thanks, Tyrell. It was fantastic.